Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Shuri, issue number 3. I can see that we're going to go in a very roundabout way of trying to rescue T'Challa. So let's get into this. This is called Groot Boom, excuse me, as in I Am Groot. So dedicated to the late, great Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. Alright, not too shabby. I can see what they did here. Writer Nnedi Okorafor, artist Leonardo Romero, color artist Jordi Belair, VC's Joe Sabino is the letterer, and the cover artist is Sam Spratt. The logo is Adam Del Rey. All right, so Shuri, she went into Groot. I am Groot. I am Shuri. She went into Groot's subconscious, so she's sharing his subconscious with him, but she's more of the vocal one. She's the one who's actually able to take over the actions, things like that. Groot is just kind of in the background talking to her, and he's trying to explain things to her at some point, but she's just not listening. This is her youth. This is her impetuousness. On top of that, she has no idea. I would imagine she has almost no idea who Groot is. Groot is an ancient, she's called the ancient, crap. It says it in here, and I can't remember what it's called. It's a beautiful name, and I forget what it's called. The Ancient One, something to that effect, the Old Ancient. And she, even with all those minds in her, Groot is older. Because Groot has the exact same thing going on in his head. Maybe that's one of the reasons why she went into Groot's head. Because Groot, as a Flora Colossus, he has all of the memories of his past. So he's unbelievably smart. Plus, trees live a lot longer, and Flora Colossi, they live a lot longer, and they've got a much more ancient history than humans do. So yeah, Groot is actually a lot more educated than her, I would say. As high IQ, I don't know, whatever, who cares? He's smart, and he's full of wisdom, and for her to not listen, this is evidence of her youth, the curse of youth, as we call it. There's this giant bug who hears Aretha Franklin being played. It's just Rocket and Groot in this ship. And they're playing Peter Quill's playlist, and they're just blasting, and Aretha Franklin's on Respect, and the bug loves the music, so it comes over to try and drain the music. Well, this bug, who's not even a full-grown bug, thank God, and mind you, it's a giant-sized space bug, but it's not a fully grown one, so they lucked out, I guess. It starts trying to drain the ship, trying to get at the song. What do you call it? These two, these three technically, Groot, Shuri, and Rocket, are trying to figure out how to stop this thing. But in the meantime, back on Earth, back at home, these guys they're trying to figure out a way to bring Shuri back. And it takes a little while because it's a little bit confused because there's the one girl, Akoke, I think her name is, who was hiding behind the tree. She didn't want anybody to know her spot, I liked that. I really, from the previous issue, I liked that. I like that here also, that it also kind of has repercussions for her, because she got sent off in space too. But she wasn't inside Groot. She wasn't inside Rocket either. Where was she? She was inside the bug. And the bug wanted the music, so she starts singing Respect to the bug. And the bug loves it, but it wants more. And once she gets taken out, it's like, uh-oh. Now the thing wants more of it. And it also sees her. It's easy because it's it's connected to her somehow. There's some kind of a tether that they're going to have to break somehow, or just kill the effing bug. But it sees her, and now that she's back on Earth, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to come back from my tunes. I'm going to Earth to get my tunes. You ever lost a playlist? Saying iPhone or whatever ever just screwed over your playlist, and you're just like, yo, I'm about to fight over that. Like, them's fighting words. The bug lost its music, So I get that. I'm with you. I'm with you all the way so far. I'm not really going to diverge very much. In fact, in my headcanon, why did she go inside the head of the bug? Well, just like Groot has multiple histories inside of it, bugs usually have hive minds. Imagine that. So again, this is just my headcanon. I don't think that was actually explained in here. I didn't notice if it was. But I'm imagining that's the reason why she was inside this bug. All these different hive minds, it's used to the idea of having multiple voices inside of its head, so to speak. So that's pretty much the gist of the main action in this comic book. Now, there's some stuff going on behind the scenes, and I digs it. Okoye, she forget exactly why she was doing this. The comic book was kind of all over the place, and the art genuinely makes it really hard to follow along sometimes. It's hard to read because you can't just read and then take a look at the art and then move on. You have to try and make sense out of it. You know what I'm saying? The color schemes are really weird. I don't know if that's what they're actually going for in this comic book. I don't know if that's the direction they really want to go with the book or if they're just settling with it, but the art is actually starting to get really annoying. I was hoping it was going to become easier to follow along with this art, but it's not. It's not. And I think the main reason is the pencils. The pencils are just very light. They're very quick. Like, oh, you want me to draw a Shuri? Sure, here you go. Here you go. Like if I went and I was going to pay, $25, $50, $100 for a commission piece, here's my comic book cover, my blank virgin comic book cover. Could you draw a picture of, I would say like Shuri to, over top of this. So I'd have this perfectly exclusive comic book. Nobody else has this comic book cover, and of course sign it to me. If somebody just put together art like what is in this comic book, I would be really mad. I would be really mad. I don't know how I'd feel about that. I wouldn't be happy about, paying this person. Personally, I would not be happy. This would not satisfy me at all. So, like I said, I was really just hoping that it was going to get better, but it just feels like it's just not. I mean, and that's the funny thing. There's some detail in here. There is. But, like, look at the color scheme. It's weird. The art itself, when you look at, like the background is great. You look at the characters themselves. It's like, okay, I got to start looking at clothes to see who's who because they just don't look different. They all look the same to me. All these people, they just look the same. Like you look at some of the, you could tell it's pretty cool. I like how they were changed a little bit. I love the layout, the panel work and things like that. But at the same time, you look at her face. That's kind of, I know like I said it to my wife and I said that one time I was making a joke. I was like, you're basic. And she's like, hey, that's like the rudest thing you could ever say to somebody. I was like, why is that the rudest thing you'd ever say to anybody? She's like, nobody wants to just be basic. I'm like, I'm okay with being basic. I don't care what other people think, so what's it matter? And it was just a weird thing. She thought about it. She's like, yeah, I guess. I get, like, where she grew up, that was a very common thing to say to someone as an insult. That was a, major pejorative back then, amongst women, You're basic. No, I'm not. I'm special. I guess that's where it's coming from. Whatever. So here, like, I do feel that the line work in here is too basic, This is like, I almost feel like Bob Kane put more effort into his work, and all he ever did really was copy people. So, I hate to be a jerk, man. I genuinely do. I don't like insulting other people's work, their writing or their art or anything, but, like, this is just not great. I'm not happy with this line work. And sometimes it can be really cool. Like in here, like that's pretty cool. That can't be easy to draw. I've never even tried to do something like that. I'm not planning on trying something like that. You look at her arm wraps on there. That's kind of cool. I'm digging that. It's not just straight lines across. It actually looks like it's genuinely wrapped around. I would imagine, like, whenever I do my martial arts or I just go and try boxing, I'm not that great at boxing, but I'm okay. I like to be able to use my feet, but you ever put tape around your hands for something like that and you're wrapping it around? It's not just straight lines. Sometimes people will draw a flannel shirt on somebody. I hate seeing flannel shirts in comic books. They literally just got, like, they've taken a ruler and just zap, 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 and I'll do the lines for the seams and the arms and then, the seams, across here and things like that. But it's like, that's not what flannel shirts look like. They're patterned, they're detailed. Don't draw a flannel shirt if you're not going to actually draw a paneled shirt. I don't want you to just draw a bunch of lines and say, oh, there you go, it's a flannel shirt, because that's not how things look. I like to see bends and curves and things like that. I'm not looking for, a Vincent van Gogh, but I'm looking for a lot more than that. So, I don't like seeing flannel shirts. And likewise, this looks like somebody who would not draw a flannel shirt like that. So there's good, there's bad. But the bad is very noticeable. You have to actually look for the good, in my opinion. Anyway, I like this comic book. It's exhaustive. What I'm saying? It's exhausting. Different, right? Exhaustive as opposed to exhausting. The book was a little bit exhausting. It took a little bit to get through the book. I couldn't just read the book and just, oh yeah, it wasn't a page turner. Like, I had to consciously think about, should I turn the page? Not quite that bad, but we're taking the long way to tell a story. It's like, here's the story that I've got, but I'm going to throw in a bunch of other little adventures on the way to that story. Now, I know that's the way that screenplays for TV series are written. That's the way that you write TV screenplays and things like that, because you've got to have the overarching story that's being told for all the seasons. You've got to have the specific plot agenda per season. Like, this is the main, I'm trying to get from here to here, but I'm going to run into episodic, situations along the way. But all of these should be, in general, or just at least once every 3 episodes, throw in there the idea that, oh, we're still trying to find this, so that all the episodes get connected. And then, of course, you've got the individual episodes, which are the individual, Dungeons and Dragons missions that you're going on. You get what I'm saying? That is how TV series are written. While I suppose that would certainly work for comic books, and I've seen it work very often before, this one actually feels like it's being done as a TV serial. So far, I don't like it. Because it feels as though, okay, you were just doing this and then you let something like this happen. Why? It's odd. Just the way that it's written, it feels forced, I should say. There, that's a good way to look at it. So I don't dislike it, but I'm not in love with it. I'm not anxious to pick up this book every week, and I was kind of hoping for something different than that. Also, the way that Shuri was dealing with things, I remember when we got first introduced to this version of the Guardians of the Galaxy as a team, the movie version that everybody's familiar with. I remember that Tony Stark was with them. Now, I don't want to get into a conversation of who's smarter, who's got a higher IQ, Shuri or Tony. They both study completely different sciences. One studies engineering, one studies physics. One is an engineer, one is a physicist. That's different. I could get into similar topics with a physicist, but physicists, on average, even if they're applied physics as a whole is more theoretical. Engineering is more physical. It's more hands-on. Let me display my work. Let me make something for you, as opposed to write down a formula on a piece of paper and try and prove it. You know what I'm saying? So getting into that argument of who's smarter, Shuri or Tony Stark, it's pointless. Especially considering the fact that she's so much younger than he is. I remember when I worked as an engineer, I realized that I was getting bored. It took a while to recognize it, but when you're creating this and creating that, and it's exciting, after a while your ideas start to become stale, and you start just thinking about miniaturizing things. Once you decide to start miniaturizing your work or somebody else's work and things like that, it's like you kind of realize that you need to hire a new R&D team because your ideas just aren't cutting it anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's like now you're just looking at things to stay busy. Now you're just looking at things to make money for the big guys so you can continue collecting a paycheck, which doesn't rise or decrease depending on what you build. It could increase your net worth, but unfortunately you're going to have to move to a different company in order to do that for someone to actually recognize your actual value. Anyway, I feel like in many ways, the way that we're looking at Shuri, she appears more intelligent because she is younger. She does have more fresh ideas. I think that as long as Shuri is designed that way or written that way, then she'll stay fresh. As long as she's written as she is still young. Tony Stark wasn't able to do, Tony Stark was baffled by all that they were able to do in space because you got older civilizations, therefore much better developed technologies that don't exist on Earth. When you consider that probably half of all the tech equipment that exists on Earth is thanks to Stark International, you kind of start to realize that, yeah, Tony Stark would be amazed by the technology that exists out there. He wouldn't know necessarily how to use it. Him trying to reverse engineer it would be a painstaking process, but he's also older. With Shuri, I could see her being more, being in a similar situation, but being more enlightened and more, what's the word for it? Exuberant, let's just say, about seeing these techs, as opposed to going, crap, we don't know anything on Earth, like Stark has done. I'd expect her to be more like, oh my God, I can see where we have to go next in order to achieve this kind of tech? Or what other ideas are out there? That's what I'd like to see. But her just coming around and saying, oh, well, we just got to make a Tesla coil. I guess in some ways that particular thing is fine because it's tech that already exists. But being able to see it in the biochemical understanding of this giant bug was a bit much. I think that, for me, it felt like a stretch. I don't need to see Shuri as being this all-knowing creature. She's too young for that. You can't have her stay young and being all-knowing. That's just not going to work. She's got to run into problems, and she's got to approach it like a young person, a young genius, super genius, in so much as being able to, go, oh my God, this is better than anything I ever imagined. Wow. And maybe just, we're being shot out. Yeah. Oh, yeah, let's go. I'm more interested in seeing her written like that. I don't need Shuri to be the solve-all for everything. I can't imagine Shuri having any, not a single one, technological idea that Groot wouldn't have inside of him because of his familial history, passed on through the roots, through the trees, the flora colossi. So I'm worried that this comic book isn't going to grasp me the way that I was really hoping to. As we continue on, I don't want to see her embarrass Tony Stark. I want to see her impress Tony Stark. You know what I'm saying? I want to see her compete with Tony Stark, and I want Tony Stark to be able to not necessarily put her in her place. I'm not interested in seeing nonsense like that. I am interested in Tony Stark being able to give her hints that she's not quite there yet, while still being impressed with what she's able to do, and not necessarily from a fatherly perspective. I want to see her impress him in ways that, he also says, wow, I've lost a lot of my creative edge. This is brilliant. I never would have thought of this. You know what I'm saying? I'd like to see a more competitive nature as opposed to just like this. I don't want to see her be the solve-all. That's not what I'm looking for here. If that happens, I promise you, I don't care if you're Shuri's biggest fan, all of you, I don't care. I'm gonna lose my vigor for wanting to watch this, read this comic book. I think most of us are gonna wind up falling off, and the problem is, I feel that most of us are not even gonna know why. But I just told you why. She's got to be able to run into problems that she can't solve. That's the best kind of, and is like literally, this is one of my favorite parts about reading Tony Stark books, besides me wanting to hate him so much because he's such a jerk. I love it when he runs into problems that he can't figure out. That's my favorite part of the Iron Man comic books. But at the same time, how often has that happened? Not a lot. And even though the Tony Stark, the Iron Man comic books have continued for a long time, Tony Stark has gotten stale too. Tony Stark has gotten stale more times than he hasn't. All throughout his run, as long as he's been, it's more like a nostalgia thing than anything else. Plus, DC Comics doesn't have anything like Tony Stark. He's a very unique character. What's so unique about Shuri? There's a lot of factors that happenstance work for a Tony Stark Iron Man character that you can't rely on for Shuri. Those factors simply are not there. There is zero nostalgia for Shuri. While there may be all this new love for Shuri, there's not nostalgia, and that's important. So I'm really hoping that she's going to be written different than what I see her in this issue. If everything is within her wheelhouse, if everything possible is something that is plausible for her to create or improve or, make functional, then it's going to get boring really quick. And there's going to be people who are like, I love Shuri. Oh, I haven't read her last, arc. I haven't bought her comic books for about a year now, but no, I love Shuri. That's what's going to happen quickly. I hope that somebody important hears this and at least considers it. That's all I'm looking for. Anyway, here's to the comic book going onward and upward. Faster, further, and farther, right? That's it for me. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.